last piece, which is about we are hiring for short term, which is our current strategy, versus really expecting people to stay for long term, but also us, are we hiring for today or are we hiring for tomorrow? How do you deal with that paradox? Let's start with that one.
I think that's quite a challenge at the moment. I don't think it's just in our organization, it's probably everywhere. When it really comes down to it, hiring managers want someone who can hit the ground running. So what do they want? They want to go with what they know. They want to look at pedigree. They want to look at, just matching skill sets. And that's because they are under pressure to perform. So there's a lot of pressure to deliver. And so when you try to talk to them about potential, I don't know if you've experienced this, but that's a hard conversation. And when you couple that with the lady's comment before about, hiring managers can't articulate what they are looking for, it becomes a huge challenge for recruiters. So how do organizations deal with this? I think there's a huge need to train hiring managers. And more importantly, if you're running a project, you spend quite a lot of time on business requirements, right? So you're doing a technology project, an organization will have an incredible amount of structure around writing business requirements and submitting it, and then you've got back and forth reviews, etc. We don't apply the same discipline when it comes to understanding and articulating the role that we're trying to fill and what is not just the technical skills we're looking for, but what are the soft skills that's going to be essential to deal with this dilemma of short-term versus long-term, right? So if you get the right soft skills and you start to focus on that, then you're going to get learning agility. Some people call it learnability. And those sorts of candidates are going to survive because they're going to be curious, they're going to be flexible, they're going to be hungry for new, and they're going to be very agile. So I think it's investing that time on getting those requirements right. And so to some extent, I think hiring recruiters need to enforce that discipline. I'm not sure how many people here operate using a HR business partner model, where coming back to the point that the HR role is a strategic role, right? And a lot of organizations, when I first joined my organization, Fidelity, I've only been here 5 months, I was whisked away into a HR business partner a strategy session, and they wanted to know how can we have an equal voice at the table. So they were struggling with this, what's the view of the hiring manager in relation to their role. And I think still in some organizations, hiring managers are treating HR business partners not in a very strategic way. They're just basically throwing instructions or expecting the hiring manager, the HR business partner, or the recruiter to understand magically what's in their head about what they want. And look, I've done it myself. You kind of think, well, you should know what we need for a chief operating officer role, or and you kind of expect it, but they don't. And that time is really important. So there's an onus on the recruiters to push back and say, and really extract that information, to ask the questions. Yeah. Have that conversation, and then we'll address a lot of these other issues that are cropping up.
Yeah. So can you share an experience? I loved what you said about bringing that equilibrium of the relationship and the recruiter to really take that leadership role to say, I'm going to inquire, I'm going to extract, use the word extract, because probably the hiring manager will have many other things that he or she is doing. So it's really about extracting that information. So any sharing of any experience that you've had as a hiring manager where there was a person from the recruitment team who actually extracted that, and anything that we can learn from that experience?
It depends on what stage the organization is at in regard to viewing recruitment as a strategic role, right? So if you're just embarking on that journey of, the HR business partner relationships, you're kind of in transition. You're trying to moving away from just being a HR generalist where you did a whole range of things. And it takes time for you to gain that power range, right? So how do you kind of, and that's what it's about. How do you increase your power range and get yourself a seat at that table, a voice at that table? And one of the ways, my advice to the recruiters and the HR business partners is you need to be the expert. So you need to really, really come to the table with expertise. And you need to start, once you have that, you demonstrate you've got that expertise, you sort of gain some power range. Because quite often, the HR business partner will be the most junior person at a table. So at my management table, the HR business partner is probably the most junior person. So, and in the Indian context, where hierarchy still plays quite a role, it's very difficult for them but a bit of coaching and giving them, that permission is really important.
Yeah.
But it is a journey.
So I'm going to pick up two of the paradoxes that were shared by the group and see if we can cover them together. One was, I think, a really felt-hearted, and I think everyone will agree in this room, quality versus cost. The hiring manager will come with a long list of expectations and wish list, but then saying, okay, this is the budget. So how do we deal with that paradox? And the first one that we were mentioning about right talent versus right time. These are really practical challenges that we are dealing with as hiring, as recruiters. So what's your advice on how to manage those?
The quality versus cost is an ongoing topic, and I think recruiters, all of you would have felt the pain of those conversations. It's about having different options, I think, so to present to hiring managers. And one of the ways, you'll be doing a lot of stuff in the recruitment space. So we are automating some of the processes. We're trying to, which enables us to be able to capture more resumes, to be able to present analytics to hiring managers on, how many resumes you've been able to capture, how you've shortlisted. So now we can give them data. Whereas previously, based on the requirements, whether they were good enough or not, if you presented 3 CVs, the hiring manager may turn around and say, is that all you've got? But if you can demonstrate, which you can do now with some of the technologies, the volume that came in, how they were shortlisted, what the success rate has been based on previous, interviews, etc., you can have a much more effective conversation. And I think it's about presenting data that helps the hiring manager go back and argue the case. Because quite often, funding doesn't happen because they don't have the data to back it up. And I think it's very rare when you can provide senior leadership with a good business case where you have data backing up, your case, that you'll get pushback if the role is critical. And so I think it's having the right information and that's being enabled now from what I can see.
Yeah, great. So I'm going to go to one of the ones that we had prepared to share with you, because I think it kind of contradicts what I was sharing in the morning about artificial intelligence and the importance of standardization. And when we were having this discussion, Lorraine said that there's a paradox there as well. Because while we want to standardize and we want to create an opportunity to predict success, are we killing the diversity? Are we trying to just kind of put everyone through a particular standard process, and hence, are we missing out on that one or two or several individuals that actually don't fit the process, but actually bring that diversity? So can you share that? And I'm going to come to the audience again for questions now.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I became passionate when I was talking to you about this topic was I was recently in Melbourne, and all of the grads, the kids who are graduating at the end of December are currently going through the whole graduate recruitment process in Australia at the moment, and my son happens to be one of those. So, you know, being I don't know how he tolerated my presence, honestly, because I was there, and you know, he had all these, and I was totally involved in his CV and all of that. And you know, because you know your child and you know your child's potential, I was able to observe what he went through with this hiring process, using some of the tools like the video interviews, some of the aptitude tests, and honestly, I couldn't do those aptitude tests. And I can guarantee you, if you put your organization, your existing employees through the aptitude tests that we subject new hires to, most of them would not pass it. You know, so this is what I mean about, you know, we need to be careful. Whilst technology is great and there are phenomenal benefits, we need to really be thinking about how we're using it and being aware of some of the bias that we could be programming into it. So if you're setting aptitude tests, the kids or the people that are going to be getting a certain score are a certain type of people. And if that's your cutoff, there's your bias in itself. So, but there's other things that you can do. So the thing I really liked is the video interviews, you know, the very brief video clips where you can have a couple of targeted questions and you can capture the candidate and see the candidate, look at the body language. That to me is much more meaningful. And not to say bias doesn't disappear, but I just worry about, you know, programming other biases into that whole selection process.
Wonderful, thank you. Megha, I'm going to need your help on the questions. So if you can just tell me who is the person, then we'll identify the person in the room.
Sure, Esther. So we have the first question from Fez, who says, we need the best people.
Let's just find
Fez,
where is. Okay, yeah.
Okay. So do you want to state your
Yes.
question?
Yeah.
He's just getting.
Yeah. Go ahead, please. Thank you. Yes.
A lot of us spoke about the same thing. I think every hiring manager, every talent acquisition person says that we need the best talent. We need the person as on yesterday. We don't have time. And then we need at the cheapest cost, whether it is the agency fee or the salary. So that, I think, remains one of the biggest paradoxes in the talent acquisition space.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you get it?
No.
Sorry, can
So
you
what is the
rephrase?
paradox?
What's the paradox of the question that you want?
Yeah, so
Really sorry.
paradox remains that how do we address that? I mean, the question is how do we address this?
How
Are
do we address?
organizations ready to pay more, wait more for the best talent?
Okay.
Or we continue to live with this paradox?
Yeah, wonderful. So I think we had a similar point here about compensation and capability. Is that what you're talking about? A little bit? Yeah? Yes, Lorraine.
I think it comes back to what we were saying earlier, that are we having the right conversations? I mean, I know from my experience in senior leadership roles, you know, when a hiring manager gets pushed back, it's because they can't articulate the reason for, you know, for an exception. They can't articulate why we need to pay more well enough. And I think that's where the problem is. It's in the articulation. So now we've got access to analytics, we've got access to, you know, so much data. We just have to get skilled at the articulation bit. It's very, very, I don't know, how, you would have, I mean, many of you would be in senior roles. How often would you knock back a request when there was a good justification for it? You know, you can answer that yourself. So I think it just comes back into articulating that.
Yeah, and the articulation is the output of a conversation.
Yes.
So how many conversations we actually having instead of just sending a requisition form and then email it to me or put it in the system.
That's right, and I think it's, you know, it's how passionate are you about it when you're speaking to your, are you leaning in when you're talking to your you know, hiring manager and speaking passionately about the fact that about the data that you're presenting. So it's all in that. What's the body language that you're using? Do they see an urgency? Do they see your stress? And do you have data to back it up?
I'm seeing a 0 there, but I still want to take
Yes, we
one
have
more
to
question.
take one more question.
Yes.
But before that, Esther, this was the most upvoted question, so we have a goodie bag powered by Indeed for Faiz. So can we have a huge round of applause for Faiz, please? So there is the
Which
question
one, the second
there.
question?
So I'm so sorry, we can take that question maybe during the breaks, but we'll have to take that question,
Yeah.
and that's the most upvoted one. And it is anonymous, so I would request whoever has asked this question to identify.
Yeah,
Please,
go ahead, please. Can you
Did you ask
go
the
ahead?
question?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay,
Would
so
you
now there's a
just-
confusion.
introduce yourself? Yes, Anu.
The question is, the biggest challenge that I face is the expectation versus reality.
Okay.
What you expect when you see a talent versus actually what the reality is when the person joins. So that's the biggest worry, and at all stages of recruiting.
Very nice. Okay, so it's the paradox of before joining and after joining.
It is the expectation that this was an amazing candidate.
Yeah.
But reality is not met everything that we wanted.
Wonderful.
So expectation versus reality.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, Anu. Yes,
Yeah, and I
Lorraine?
think that's why, interview processes are getting longer and longer and longer. People are finding it, because it is a risk. You don't know. CVs can look fantastic. You don't really know how that person will perform under pressure. You don't know what their stakeholder engagement skills are like. You don't know whether they are resilient. So you are taking a gamble on, when you hire someone in. But you try and mitigate that risk by having a number of interviews. Now, there's a lot of, there's a view that more than 3 interviews is anyway not going to lead to a better outcome. But I think organizations are starting to reflect that. You'll see 6 or 7, rounds of interviews, aptitude tests, a whole range of things to try and give yourself that comfort. But there's no real answer to that. It is, it is a pun. And that's one of the reasons why people tend to go with, that we like internal referrals, right? Because somebody knows someone, they're kind of vouching for them, and we want to encourage that. So internal referrals is something we're trying to get up. The other thing is people bring people that they know from other organizations. So you tap into people that you know, that you've worked with. So that's another way that we try to overcome this. So there are other avenues.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks, Anu, and thanks, Lorraine. So as we close, closing advice for all of us on one thing that we should stop doing and one thing that we should start doing from tomorrow.
I would definitely stop. Okay, let me say what I would. My advice is really start being an equal partner at the table. You need to control the level of the conversation you're having. And, so that's basically in your control. Start having those strategic conversations. To enable you to have those strategic conversations, start equipping yourself with information and data, and just start practicing it. So if you're not doing it, just start. You may stumble a bit, it doesn't matter. You learn. Get some advocates as well in your organization who speak for you, right? So it may be your MD or, your line manager, someone who's speaking for you. I think that's definitely a start. In terms of, stop, I would say it would be the flip side of it. Don't allow yourself to be treated as, someone who's going to just take instruction.
Yeah.
So I don't see that as your role.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lorraine. Let's
Thank
give her
you.
a big round of applause. Thank you very
you.
much.